Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, Touch Podcast Get Dizzy. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going good. Can I tell you one unexpected side effect from working at home is
Yes.
I think my vision is getting rapidly worse because when I was in the office or anywhere else, you are constantly shifting your focus because you're looking at different people, you're looking at different things, you're walking to the kitchen. Now I'm 80-90% of my time I'm just staring at my screen, and that's just not that far away from my face, and I think it's having an effect, a negative, terrible effect.
So this is something that Sarah said to me yesterday. I think we went to the Golden Road Brewery has a drive up pickup kind of situation. So that is how we get replenished with beer. So we were going to pick up some beer yesterday, and I was going out for to drive for the first time in 3 weeks, and was like, "Hey Sarah, do you want to go for a car? Do you want to leave the house for 15 minutes?" And so we're in the car, and we both got masks on and everything. And she just goes, I don't think I have used my eyes to focus so far away as I am right now. In the last month.
Yeah.
You're only ever looking at surfaces that are at most 20 feet away, you know?
Yeah. I feel like this is going to be great for optometrists.
If optometrists can ever open again, Mark, will you ever allow someone to peer into your eyeballs again? Speaking of peering into one's eyeballs, my copy of Sonic Forces. Would you like to borrow it? Someday, maybe you can. The program is on hiatus for the time being. Someday we will feel safe enough to go to optometrists and the post office again, but it is not this day. If you would like to get on the list to borrow Sonic Forces, you can. All you gotta do is email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com and let us know your mailing address, and then I send to you. You play it for as long as you want. Again, this is conditional to the time when I'm comfortable doing this. Mark, something else I wanted to address very quickly. I didn't realize that this was happening, and I didn't realize it was happening today. The special hardcover edition of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue 100 came out today, and it includes my expanded and collected interviews with 40 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles artists and writers and editors and letterers and colorists. And it's out today. It's 60 pages of interview with creators. I didn't think it was coming out because comics stopped coming out, but it's part of the book market technically, so it's out. So if you are interested in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or you're interested in what I do, you can grab it from any online bookstore, or all bookstores are online now because they have to be, or it's on Comixology too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's so exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. I was very I got my comp copies a couple weeks ago, and it was right before Diamond closed down the comics distributor, and I was like, well, cool. I don't know if this is ever going to get in anyone's hands but mine, and now it has. So
yeah, that's so cool. Also, we're of course celebrating Retro Month in April, and we've been playing SNES classics. Today we're going to be talking about Yoshi's Island, but next week, wrapping up Retro Month, is going to be Star Fox on April 24th. The one that I think you have promised to finish it, and I have promised to give it a good college try.
I will, finish Star Fox. That is my promise to you, the listener, and you, Mark. We would love to have y'all play along with us. Star Fox is such a interesting singular experience that even if you only put a couple minutes into it, you will have some sort of something to say about it. So please write into us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And participate in the conversation because we would love to incorporate that.
Also, do you know what? Are there cheat codes for Star Fox? Let me know because I want them cheat codes.
If there are cheat codes, no one tell Mark. Just at me, okay?
You cannot tell me, but you can't shut down my internet. I will find these.
I bet I could shut down your internet. What a mean thing. Why would I do that? All right, Mark, obviously we have a huge game to discuss today, so let's do it. Let's get into Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. But before we get into what we thought about it, it's always good to lay out the ground rules. And thank you, Martin, so much for this email that I have now read on 2 previous episodes. I'm going to read a little bit today, and I'm going to read next week because it's a good thing to keep in mind. Martin says, one thing I would love for you to discuss is how well these games would suit someone who has no nostalgia for them and has become used to games with 21st century quality of life improvements. I know that will be tough as your playthroughs will be bundled with tons of emotions, but I trust you two to try to step back and give an objective opinion. Mark, I think we should start there because I think you and I come to this game from a different place than we did the 2 previous games, A Link to the Past and Super Metroid.
Yeah, surprisingly, I have never really played this game before. It totally passed me by as a kid. I didn't even know that a game with the words Super Mario World 2 in the title, albeit very tiny, but in there, I didn't even know that existed. That would have totally blown my mind. So it wasn't until Yoshi's Story on Nintendo 64 that I was even really aware that Yoshi games like this existed.
Can I make a little bit of a confession around Super Nintendo and Mario games?
Please, yeah.
So I did wait very patiently for you to give me permission to make this confession. I did not really get into and really play either Super Mario World or Super Mario World 2 until well after the Super Nintendo was a retro console. Both games, and I don't know why, I was obviously a big fan of the Super Nintendo. But I think by that point, my brain wasn't wired for Mario. I feel like after Super Mario Brothers 3, I was kind of off of it until Mario 64. So both Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island passed me by it while they happened. And Super Mario World, I was a lot quicker to come back to. I think I started to get obsessed with it in college, right? So that would have been 2002, 2003, which I still didn't really have room in my heart yet for Yoshi's Island. And it's not until really I think the first time I played it more than just played a piece of a level, I was playing the Game Boy Advance version, which I understand is sacrilege. But yeah, I mean, it really wasn't until the Super NES Classic Edition came out that I gave this anything even resembling a real try.
Yeah, and I think, well, actually, how much further do we want to go with this? Or was there anything else up top we wanted to cover before we start diving into our impressions?
Well, so I guess let's maybe lay out there just a little bit. There are 2 things I want to explore just a little bit first, and one is maybe a little bit drier, so I don't want to spend too much time. But just considering the time, the year that this game came out, it's 1995. It is the the end of the Super NES's lifespan. And I understand, like, Super Metroid was the year previous, right? It was 1994. But for whatever reason, the distance between 1994 and 1995 seems huge, right? The Nintendo 64 is on the horizon. The Virtual Boy obviously lighten up the game charts. But it feels like such a different. It feels like a more like mature era for, and not like mature in like content, but just like a self-assured Nintendo that's not like it's weird that this has a 2 on it but isn't really a sequel to Super Mario World.
Totally. Like this would fit so well in the our Retromon series from last March, where we talked about weird sequels, because this is, like a sequel to Super Mario World in name only, and it's like barely in name only. Um you mentioned Super Metroid coming out in 1994, but to me I feel like the game from 1994 that uh has a lot of like bearing on the discussion is Donkey Kong Country.
Right. So 94 was the original Donkey Kong Country. That means 95 was Donkey Kong Country 2.
I think so.
So this and Donkey Kong Country 2 came out in the same year.
And I feel like there's a lot of like parallels even in the game itself, like in the gameplay between Yoshi's Island and Donkey Kong Country 2. Um but yeah, it's just like it's a weird it it feels like a reaction to Donkey Kong Country in some ways to me.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have a lot of complicated feelings about Yoshi's Island.
And we will get through all of those thoughts. I am confident. But I guess the other thing that I wanted to ask as it relates to Yoshi's Island is, what is your general impression of the Yoshi games? Because while this is a sort of sideways sequel to Super Mario World, what it really does is kick off the Yoshi franchise, right? And what are your feelings on that franchise in general?
Yeah, it's not really my thing. So I like platformers that ask a lot of like exploration of you are just, what for whatever reason, I think it's cuz my brain was like trained on Super Mario Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
that a platformer where it's telling me not to go fast, it's telling me to like slow down and explore and like try to, is like anathema to me. Like I can't, I just like I it's hard for me to like click with that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Also, I feel like like Yoshi's Island is the beginning of this, and the further the games have gone on a little bit, they've tilted a little too saccharine for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I not the biggest fan.
Yeah, and like it is interesting to see like the real beginning of that, like a different take on the art style, right? Where like a cuteness or almost like a DIY quality is, even though it's not really like as gimmicky, or like there's less of a like singular identity behind it here than there is in like Crafted World or Yoshi no, Woolly World. I was trying to say Epic Yarn, and I knew that wasn't right. I knew that was a Kirby game. But these games feel, they have that very like
It's like,
gentle,
yeah,
yeah, like
it's like
lived in.
Crayola, like picture book
Hmm.
aesthetic. Yeah. That gives it that like
Yeah,
handmade feel that does totally feel like what it eventually evolved into feels correct. Like that feels like the direction that you would expect something like that to go. It feels very organic.
yeah. So for my part, have really enjoyed the last two Yoshi games, Crafted World and Woolly World. But largely, I have enjoyed them as multiplayer, as co-op experiences. I played Woolly World with Sarah basically the whole time, and I played Crafted World with my buddy Taylor. Um, and as games that you just like chill out and experience together, I find that to be like very rewarding, and not in like a traditional platformer kind of way, but just in a We are, two people experiencing something cute together. And I feel like, well, Yoshi's Island certainly starts in that direction. It doesn't do co-op, and it doesn't. It is not as leisurely as those two games. And this is probably the least leisurely of the Yoshi games, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it's like it is kind of a I don't really know how to say it, but basically it's like an uncomfortable mix of traditional Mario platforming and something else, and it makes sense that because it's their first attempt at that, that like that's where it like but why it would be that way, but it feels a little bit like an uncomfortable marriage between the two.
I will agree with that, and I think that is sort of like the thesis statement of my read on this is that it is a combination of two things that I like an awful lot, and I don't know if for me it comes down on the right side of either of those equations, but I do frequently find the game to be a ton of fun. But so let's dial back just a little bit here because we got an email from Connor with a couple points that he wanted to raise, and so I'm going to bring up the first here because I think it is a good place for us to start. He says, "In Super Mario World, do we consider each Yoshi that Mario finds the same original Yoshi from this game, or is the Yoshi or group of Yoshis in Super Mario World a totally different Yoshi? Either a descendant of the one that helped save Baby Mario or a completely unrelated Yoshi? Have we not considered the social politics of the Mushroom Kingdom when ditching a Yoshi just to make a super long jump in Super Mario World? All jokes aside, is it the same Yoshi in every Mario game? Does Mario interact with a tribe of Yoshis until he meets the Yoshi in Super Mario 64? I don't think I've ever considered this until this moment, but now I need to know. Any thoughts?"
This brings up an excellent point, and one that a friend of the show, June, and I were texting about last night, which is canonically, are the baby Mario characters, are they like, is this happening way in the past, basically? Is like Mario a baby when these games are happening, or is like baby Mario canonically a different character, separate timelines, like not at all related? It is just a thing. It is maybe a totally different being that is just named Baby Mario.
So can I offer my theory on this?
I would love you to, yeah.
So
I like how you're asking permission a lot tonight.
And I will continue to do
You're
so if that's all right with you. Well, this is one that, like my Super Mario World confession from moments ago, I feel is a little bit of a dangerous thing to say, right? This is kind of my dangerous idea, but here it is. I don't think the events of Yoshi's Island actually happened in the Mario canon. I think Yoshi's Island is a picture book story that either the Yoshis tell each other to explain their relationship to Mario, or that Mario tells to other people to explain his relationship with Yoshi. That's why it is presented in this aesthetic. It is a fable. It is a set of and then it grew to enormous size, and then we shrunk down, and we're inside the frog. All of these things. Like it is very clearly presented as a storybook. And I think that is why.
And I had not thought about it that way, but I think that makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's something that they've dabbled with before, like Super Mario Brothers 3 being a stage presentation. So I think that's a great way to look at it. Partly because it also explains why we never have to worry about seeing like a baby Wario or a baby Luigi, or sorry, Waluigi, which we know we will never see. It would be a cursed image. Nintendo would never officially show a baby Wario.
Isn't there a baby Wario in one of these games?
I refuse to believe it. I refuse to look it up, and I refuse to believe that it's true.
Well, Mark, I want you to know that I am looking it up right now, but I will not tell you my findings.
That's all I ask.
But I do ask that you observe my face as I finish my search and click.
But what I'll never know is if that response was to a canonical image or a DeviantArt image.
No, it was a real image. He really exists. It's Yoshi's Island DS. But so yeah, I think it also like just generally speaking, how do we think about the Yoshis as a people versus like a single canonical Yoshi? This is a Toad situation, right?
I think so, where there's there's like a Yoshi that you
Hmm.
interact with all the time, and he is your pal, your Yoshi, and yeah, you like jump off him and he falls into the void, but he's fine with it. It's what he's there for.
Right.
Um
Plus, it's not like Mario's not falling into the void every 20 minutes anyway. It
and then there
happens to these characters.
yeah, it's just part of life for them. It's one of the reasons that we would never be able to, like have a long conversation. We just don't have a lot in common.
That's
Um
right.
I so yes, so there is the singular Yoshi and then there is the collective group of Yoshi. And I think you as Mario have renowned with all Yoshi. You're a friend to all Yoshi, but you are
Yes.
best friends with one Yoshi.
Right. And no one will really ever know why that is, but Yoshi's Island is the story that they tell each other as to explain no, Yoshi has been helping Mario since he was a baby, right?
Yep. And is it all lies? Possibly.
Possibly. Are they comforting lies? You bet they are. Okay, but so let's talk now about our specific play experience this time through. Mark, where did you play this game? How did you play this game?
I of course played it on my Switch on the Nintendo Switch Online.
And I, of course, played it on my Super NES Classic Edition. I have been moving it between the bedroom and the living room because it's very easy to move. Okay. I don't. I guess for whatever reason, this game feels harder to talk about for me. I feel like I don't have a singular experience of it in the
So
way that I do the others.
yeah, I think that's fair. I think one of the things I struggled with is that I just fundamentally find the central mechanic of this game to be not fun. Um like carrying like having it be kind of like a eternal escort mission and always having to carry Mario on your back or baby Mario on your back, and then having like anytime you get hit, the punishment is like him like crying, and then you have to track him down. I did not enjoy that. So in like the aspects of the game that I did enjoy, which there is quite a bit, it was all the stuff like around the central mechanic, and I think that's what makes like it for me anyway. It's a little bit difficult to talk about because there's like things that I've liked and but this like the core of the game I did not enjoy very much.
That's interesting. Like I almost don't know that that is what I consider the core of the game, like the escorting Mario. It really just feels like your health bar to me, or like it's just a thing that like that's the punishment for taking a hit. And I do think that this, and we talked about it a little bit, that this game is occasionally too like punishing with like enemies on the screen where like you are going to get hit and then that sends you into a panic as you try to get Mario back before you've lost too much time. That I would almost rather just lose some of those like star whatever it is little health points, and then like continue on the way. Like it almost negates the benefit that you get in like a regular Mario game of having those couple frames of invincibility after getting hit. Like after you get hit, now you need to recover instead of being invulnerable for a second.
I also think that you and I are not the type of like people in video games who want to collect everything and like wanting to explore a level to its fullest, and because there's no time limit in these levels. They are
Hmm.
really they're like all of them are kind of like mazes and labyrinth like they are made to explore so you can get all of the flowers, all of the like red coins, all of the coins. And if you don't want to do that or you don't try to do it, then like it's like because I don't generally like that sort of collectathon mechanic in games, so I was not really doing that in these levels. And so I do think that I was like missing out on a lot of what the game had to offer. It's just hard because like I wasn't really interested in that part of it.
Yeah, which is really hard because there obviously are games that I do like to get everything in. I guess the most recent game that I like 100%ed was the Metroid Samus Return of Samus. Shoot, whichever one,
I know,
whichever
I
one the
can never
remake was.
remember.
I forgot now. Samus Returns, I think, is the 3DS one. But it always comes from a game that I am already having a good time playing. And so when I finish a level, I go, "Oh, great! Let's hop back in and let's do that level again." To get everything, and without exception, every single one of these worlds, by the time I every level, by the time I finished it, I was like, "Great, next level." I never wanted to go back in, especially if I was missing one flower. Like I
Mm-hmm.
never want to go back in for one flower or like 2 red coins. Like forget that. I thought I was being thorough in the first place. um but yeah, and there is something to me that feels a little bit like lopsided about the risk reward of exploring further, because the further you explore, the more time you expose yourself to the danger of getting hit, and therefore not finishing with full health. Um, and but then if you're like, well, I'm not going to risk it, then you end up missing out on red coins or a flower or something.
Yeah, totally. Can I tell you, the more I played this game, the way that I guess kind of like was wrapping my head around it is so years ago there was I think like some interview with Miyamoto where he was talking about like not liking Donkey Kong Country, or that's how it is interpreted or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the story for a really long time that Miyamoto didn't like Donkey Kong Country, and that Yoshi's Island was kind of his like response to it. Like Donkey Kong Country has those pre-rendered 3D like globs of goo, and he
Yeah.
was like, no, we're doing this like really like children's book aesthetic. This is my response to it. And like in more recent years it's come out that he, or at least he has said that it wasn't true, and that he obviously worked very closely with Rare when they were making Donkey Kong Country. But and then so it's like, okay, was the kernel of that's true is that like after the success of Donkey Kong Country, Nintendo, because Nintendo at this time was all about like play it loud, and they were trying to be radical and cool to compete
Yeah.
with the Genesis. And so it's like, okay, is the kernel of truth here that after the success of Donkey Kong Country and those like pre-rendered sprites, that they were like looking at this children's book aesthetic and were like, whoa, this is way too like kiddie for what we want to do. But I feel like whether any of that is true or not, that is how I was kind of approaching this game. And the more I thought about it, the more it felt to me like a response to Donkey Kong Country, and with some of like the DNA of Donkey Kong Country 2, like the like different Yoshi abilities that you can do, like the mole tank, you turn into like a train, a
Mm-hmm.
car, a plane for like short amount of time. You do a certain task, and then you go back to being like regular Yoshi. To me, that felt so much like the animal friends
Sure.
from Donkey Kong Country. And then even like I feel the parallel from Donkey Kong Country, the first one, was all very like the levels were like horizontally oriented for the most part. Then Donkey Kong Country 2, you get these like really vertical levels where it's so much more about going like up and down the screen. And
Yeah.
I felt that change in like between Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island, where it's like, okay, yeah, now we're like Yoshi's Island, we're all about going like up, going down, and yeah, you are going
Mm-hmm.
like like going the breadth of the level, but like the verticality of it just like expanded so much.
It's almost like
Um,
a Sonic the Hedgehog level, really, in the way that they're like built on top of each other.
yeah, so like the more that I started seeing it as like, whether it's true or not, like a response of sorts to Donkey Kong Country, then it like I was able to almost like embrace it a little bit more. I was more interested in continuing to see like how these themes would like play out.
It's interesting that like Donkey Kong Country can be like a useful metric to measure this game against. because they are both like obsessive about collecting things. But one of the things that this game does is it standardizes those collections. This is another observation from Connor. If you'll give me a second, I got a little bit here. He says, when playing as Mario in most 2D games, including Super Mario World, it is not only fun but often efficient to hold down the run button and zip through the levels. To me, this feels like something close to 2D games equivalent to the thrill of the acrobatics the player is capable of in 3D Mario games. However, which I totally agree with, making Mario run around is one of the pure, simple joys in all of video games. However, this game slams the brakes and slows down the player by limiting their previous snappy traversal abilities, but it totally works. Yoshi's slower, more methodical handling lends itself to the more patient style of play. Considering this game's focus is more on exploration and discovery than those that came before, this adjustment pays off incredibly well. It feels to me like a great example of when thoughtful gameplay design is paired with creative and fun platform. So yeah, just the idea that like we're taking the sort of base idea of like move fast, move around the environment quickly, and like taking that fun away, and like replacing it with a different kind of fun. Um, Feels in line with Donkey Kong Country, right? Like the original Donkey Kong Country, I remember there being moments of like stringing together cartwheels and all of that. But by the second game, it becomes much more slow and much more like methodically making sure you've got all the DK coins, all the whatever. Um, and then the other thing that I wanted to mention of how this is an interesting like parallel track to Donkey Kong Country is that they embrace the future differently, right? Donkey Kong Country embraces the future by taking these pre-rendered graphics, which were alarming to see printed, right, in like Nintendo Power and like in commercials and stuff, and then scan them into these hilarious 16-bit sprites, and present them as though they are a futuristic presentation of graphics. Meanwhile, Yoshi's Island genuinely does something. It's not just the art style that is like ambitious and unique, and like pioneering. It is the way that the machine itself actually uses those sprites. So it's using both the Super FX chip, which we'll be talking about in Star Fox next week, and Mode 7 graphics to like fake a lot of perspective that the game doesn't really have.
Does it also use the FX2 chip?
I think it may, yeah.
Because for whatever reason, and this is based on vague recollections and like the Retronauts episode on Yoshi's Island that I listened to years ago, but I feel like part of the reason why it wasn't available for a really long time and on any platform, and why like the Game Boy Advance version is thought of as inferior, is because it didn't have like the FX2 chip stuff,
yes,
or like emulation. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and I mean that that's the sort of thing that you that allows the like touch fuzzy get dizzy, right? Which is when you're in a level and it's got all these platforms and these fuzzy white cloud things that when you touch them, Yoshi gets messed up in in the head, and like the whole world starts like kind of undulating on itself. And this is the game turning all of the platforms, like every individual platform and every graphic, into a polygon that it then like warps around the screen. So like it's doing something really sophisticated here. It's sophisticated for a 16-bit console from 1995. But it's really it's interesting that it is able to do that at all. But you see the same kind of technology applied to all of the giant enemy sprites. That there's so much shrinking and growing in this game, and it's taking a sprite that is a certain size and then like literally zooming in and zooming out on it, which creates a sort of like otherworldly feeling. But you'll also see it in like the ghosts and the more like elastic enemies in this game. There's one of the bosses that like is a blob of goop with a heart in it, and you throw eggs at it, and you're not dealing any damage until you hit the heart, but you are like carving out what feels like a very real geometry in this thing, right? And it's very like gooey and soft. And for a game that is so, or for like a system and a time and all that, that feels very like this block is this and this block is this, and we're only dealing in 16 bits. This feels very soft and very like nuanced and like curvy in a way that other games couldn't be at the time.
Totally. And to your point, like the whole like kind of idea of Donkey Kong Country's graphics is to be like, no, look, we can do 3D. We are the future too. You know, you can own a Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and you can have it all. And right, and so it was very in your face.
Yeah.
Yoshi's Island is like, you know, possibly even more technically advanced, but it hides it. It makes it invisible from the player, and so it has this very like simple veneer, but what they're doing underneath is like incredibly complex.
Yeah, and I think that that's even typified in the what I consider one of the base mechanics of the game, which is the egg throwing. Right? I can't really think of a video game like a Super Nintendo game prior to this moment where you could throw things at any angle. Right? Like we are pre-analog stick at this point, and you know, like sure. Samus can shoot straight up and at a 45-degree angle, and to either side and straight down. But like, can she shoot at a 12-degree angle? No, you know, like, but Yoshi can. And the game demands you to, like, understand the finer points of that geometry and really draw, straight lines that aren't like along neat axes. To the point where even at the very end of the game, as you're fighting the giant baby Bowser, that you are throwing eggs back into the background. That the game like fakes another axis. You know, in addition to it has let you do everything on the single plane, and is now like, no, now we're also taking it into the third dimension, and it feels real and looks great.
Can we talk a little bit about the bosses? Because I don't know about you, but like I found them to be one of the most delightful and surprising parts of the game, and how like
Yes.
inventive and varied they were. Because yeah, like it's all based around, you know, like throwing eggs for the most part, but like even just visually, the way that they like put you in different situations. Like I, for whatever reason, I really like the potted plant in World 2, and then I really liked the it was like the halfway boss in World 3 or 4, where you are in like the frog's stomach, like you
the
like
frog's stomach. Oh man, that is an all-timer. Because it is the one of them that, because the rest of them, like, it makes the character big, and you had to just like fight a bigger version, and kind of to that point they're all like just hurl eggs at it until it goes away. But the frog, even though the mechanic ends up being just hurl eggs at it until it goes away, that you get sucked into his stomach, and the again, it is using the FX2 chip to take you know, the background graphic that is the frog's stomach, and it wraps it around in like a kind of tube or like spherical shape that is like you genuinely feel like you are inside something, and it is like pulsating, and you just keep like whaling eggs at that uvula, because always you can kill anything by whaling on the uvula.
Well, and I like the reversal that you mentioned, because you know, previous up to this point, anytime you encountered a boss, the boss got bigger, and and this time Kamek shows up, you're like, okay, here we go again. But then this time Kamek shrinks you down, and it's just like a fun reversal at that point in the game.
And again, speaking to the point of the shrinking and growing of sprites in this game, you see the shrinking of the sprite that you've been playing as forever to this like tiny little size, and it's something that feels so like mundane and whatever now, because we're used to playing characters that are based in polygons. But the fact that they take this sprite and shrink it down is truly remarkable.
Another thing I really liked about this game, and I would love to see more of in the future, because I feel like we've lost this, is the biodiversity of the Shy Guys. There are so many like Shy Guy variants in this that I feel like we've never seen again. Like the like fat Shy Guy that you see a couple of
Oh,
times.
love a fat shy guy.
The
Love a
like
fat shy
the
guy.
like tribal warrior Shy Guys.
Hmm.
Um yeah, like they even bring back, which I feel like outside of Super Mario Brothers 2, I don't know where else you've seen these, but like the Shy Guys that are wearing like the kind of like the plague mask type thing, and they shoot bubbles or like like projectiles out of their mouths. Like
They're
all
called
of those.
sniffets.
Sniffets. I want more sniffets.
Mark, let me ask you this. It was a thought that occurred to me. Um, Outside of Super Mario Brothers 2, is this the next time that we see Shy Guys in a Mario game?
Yeah, that's I think it might be.
So I think in some ways this is a little bit like they're playing with the um like the DNA of Super Mario Brothers 2 USA, right? Like there's a little bit of Doki Doki Panic in here in like the type of enemies and even in the sort of like dreamy storybook aesthetic and just kind of like slowing things down and like setting its own priorities. Like it's so I mean, I know not every Mario game is the same, and we anytime we try to like draw a line that is like the Mario series, we're like, well, okay, it forks in 30 different ways here. But it really is neat to see like that sort of that chunk of the legacy being brought over and represented in this game.
Absolutely. And then another thing I really liked is I feel like they took advantage of the like children's book Crayola hand drawn aesthetic to give even like sprites that we're familiar with kind of like a new sheen. Like the
Mhm.
boos are like much more expressive. Goombas
As are the Koopas.
and
Yep.
the Koopas, yeah, exactly. Like they also just have, yeah, they're much more expressive. They also just have like more detail. But I also like how the Goombas, it kind of reminded me of New Super Mario Brothers, how like when it hits that point in the New Super Mario Brothers like theme music that all
Oh
the
yeah.
Koopas like
That they
dance a little
dance.
bit. Like the
Ma,
Goombas,
ma.
it seemed like when the Goombas like were about, I don't know what triggers it. It seems like when they were about to like jump off the ledge or something, they would do like that like eyebrow thing where they're like raising them like, "Oh, I'm coming for you."
Amazing.
Yeah, like just like little stuff like that. That like attention to detail I thought was like so much fun to see these like sprites that I was so familiar with from Super Mario World and how they were elaborated on in Yoshi's Island.
It's also interesting that like they don't quite behave the same way. Like the Koopas, you can the game is so built on like swallowing something and turning it into an egg. But the Koopas, if you just swallow them whole, then you've just got a shell in your mouth, right? But you can jump on them, separate the shell from the turtle, swallow the turtle, make an egg, and then use the shell. And if you, when you encounter Goombas, if you jump on them and stomp them, they flatten, but they keep walking around. Like everything about it is like what you expect the characters to be, but a little bit different. And
Yeah,
I
like
love that.
yeah, totally. Like the Lockatus were another example. Like the first
Mm.
time you encounter a Lockatu, like the whole level is built around it. And it's because, they had the level is built with these platforms or these like sand or rock that can be destroyed
Mm.
with a projectile. So now when the Lockatu is throwing, one of like the spikies, it's like destroying the land, and so you have to be very like strategic about where you're jumping. And so it was fun to see like, oh yeah, we're gonna like take this thing you're familiar with and we're gonna use it in a new way, and it presents like a new threat to you.
One of the things that I love to death every time you encounter it in this game is the Super Mario star. Um, I think this is one of the ways that the game does like a genius job of balancing itself. They usually come around in the levels that are a little bit more like recursive and like a little more like loop de loop. You're in a cave and you're like, have I been through here already? What's going on? And then there's one room that has all these like curvy walls. And then you pick up a star, and the little baby Mario hops off your back, and he's wearing a diaper and a cape and this hat that's just like flapping in the breeze. And it becomes this like anti-gravity Sonic the Hedgehog level for just like a minute, maybe. It is just like a quick little burst of like energetic obstacle course, which is mostly running. Like you have to make very few decisions, and the game doesn't like to punish you for going fast in these scenarios. And I like in that way, I almost wish there was something that either just like collected those moments, or that there was like a baby Super Mario game where you're just running around at high speed. Like, I don't know, I think it'd be great.
It's interesting. I did not really like those segments very much.
Oh, I love them.
In fact, all the transformation segments where you like turn into like a submarine or something like that, I kind of dreaded when they came
I
up.
agree with the rest of this take. Yeah.
But I initially when you started talking about it, about the stars, what that made me think of was one thing that I think is interesting are the connections between Super Mario World and Super Mario World 2, and a lot of it is in the music. Like there are times where they reuse some of the themes from Super Mario World, and I liked that a lot. I liked having those like little connections because like the games feel very different, but they made choices like that where it's like, oh right, yeah, this is a sequel to this game that I've played. Like that aspect of it feels very familiar.
I will confess that I frequently play this game without the audio on. Because like while the music is some of the music is nice, some of the music is like repetitive and like a little childish. But like the crying baby Mario is a lot. And the game is like too in love with the like squeaks and like weird little like rustling noises. The snow world is the worst culprit of this because Yoshi's slippery shoes make this like awful squeaking all the time. And then also as he passes through trees that are covered in snow, there's this like rustle sound that's like too loud in the mix or something. But like, yeah, I feel like they get a little bit too cutesy with the sound effects in this game to its detriment.
I had like finished one of the levels, and so I was on that screen where it tallies how many flowers and all that stuff, like so how many total points you got for the level. And I had set the controller down and was like looking at something on my phone, like responding to a text or something, and my husband was like, "You've been listening to that music for a long time," and it's been like it was like 30 seconds, but you feel every one of those seconds.
Yeah, totally. That screen where it shows you how much life you had, how many coins, and how many flowers you collected. Sarah refers to that as "let's check the results." And in every Yoshi game, whenever that happens, whether she's playing with me or not, I can hear her go, "Let's check the results."
Did you like the mini games? So
no.
So what about I know the end of level ones I didn't really care for, but you know how like in the levels you can unlock the houses when you find a key, and then what are those enemies called? Do you know what those things are called?
I don't know. I don't know the ones that like just go that like take the baby Mario from
and
you
are like wearing like fencing masks, or I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what they're like shy men is what they seem like to me.
Are they in other Mario games? Because they looked familiar, but I don't know if it's just because they had that like Mario aesthetic. Because I could not tell you where else they've been.
Yeah, I don't know them from anywhere else, but I think all of their little mini games, which again feels very Donkey Kong Country like, I think they're all a waste of time. And the game doesn't ever reward you for them. Like it's only like they will reward you with an extra life. But like, great.
That's how I felt about a lot of the detours in the game. Like even when you're exploring, you're like, oh, I wonder what's behind this path, and then it's like, oh, I came all this way for 2 coins. Okay.
I mean, yeah, if they just put more, more flowers in there. Like, one of the things that I really, really liked about Yoshi's Woolly World was that in addition to the like flowers, there was another set of collectibles of like 5 things in every level. That was when you collected them all, you could change the color of Yoshi to that color palette. So like there was always one more set of like important things that you actually wanted to collect because it like was a fun, like, oh yeah, I want to give my Yoshi cow colors. That's great. Um, so like, yeah, I do feel like they are not frequently enough rewarding you for some of the out of the way places that you travel to. One of the I wanted to mention quickly about one of those mini games, um, and it leads to a bigger point that I don't really know that I can support totally, but hear me out. Um, there is one of the mini games where you are passing back and forth a balloon between you and the shy man, which I'm just going to call him. And when it's like a hot potato situation, so you don't want to be caught with it when it explodes. And to pass it, you have to do a series of button and D-pad inputs, and the game shows you the direction on the D-pad, and it shows you the button, and there's a color on the button, but the color on the button doesn't correspond with the color on your Super Nintendo controller because you live in America, damn it, and your Super Nintendo buttons are pink and purple, and not the green, blue, red, and yellow that there are on the Super Famicom controller. So it's in this way that the game doesn't feel totally localized to me. Like there are ways there are a lot of weird little mistakes in the translation, like in the text in this game. And then there's also just this where I'm like, I always feel like I shouldn't be playing this game. Like it wasn't meant for me to play.
That's really, that's a really good point. And maybe at least for me, some of that is like that it was to my eyes undiscovered for so long.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, where your brain is like, no, this must be an imported classic that you never saw.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I went looking to see what the Shy Men are actually called, and it reminded me that I neglected to mention one of my favorite Shy Guy variants that show up in here, which are the ones that have like flowers on their head. Whatever those are. Super into those.
Yep.
Not Shy Guy related, but I really like apparently it's called Bert, which is that like weird clown type thing that walks around it looks like an egg wearing striped pants with like a big nose.
Oh, okay, yes.
Like
it's like a bird maybe.
Yeah,
right?
No idea. Love it. Super into it. They call him Bert the Bashful on Mario's wiki. And then apparently the Shy Men are just called Bandit. So boo to that.
Shy Men is better. Shy Men is better. But yeah, I mean, all of the what are your thoughts on both the mini games that you encounter in the levels and the mini games at the end of the levels?
I came to dread the mini games at the end of the levels, and I didn't mind some of the ones that you do with the bandits, but by the end I was not doing them. Like by the end I would see like a locked house and I'd be like, no, you will not fool me again. Like I don't feel
nice
the
try.
need to do this. I don't need the extra life, like I don't feel like this game is particularly challenging. I think it is very forgiving. Having said that, I 100% used the rewind feature every time I like lost Baby Mario because I was like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, I also found myself using frequent save states as there's no rewind feature on the Super NES Classic. But that there were just times when it felt like, oh, it's a weird spike in difficulty where it's like you have to, eat something as you're in the air and then land on like a single square. And I'm like, the game doesn't mean to be this hard right now. And otherwise I fall off and die and have to go back to the game doesn't mean to be this difficult here. I don't know why it is. So I'm just going to throw down a little save state before I do it. And I think that this game, more than the two that we've been playing previous to this, really benefits from having the 21st century, either save states or rewind features.
Yeah, like 1,000,000%. I am really glad to have like thoroughly explored this game, and to like have experienced it and to be able to talk
Hmm.
about it. I honestly don't know that I would recommend it.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I feel like it is hard because like I recommend it after World 2, right? Like I think the game gets into a lot more interesting like diversity of locations in worlds 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, it totally reminded me of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze that way, where the first two
Yes.
worlds you're like, oh, okay, we're just doing this like Mario aesthetic, we're just doing this Donkey Kong aesthetic, and then it like opens up. I agree. Like the third world in this one is like the monkey island, right? And are those monkeys
Yeah.
super annoying? 100%.
Hugely.
But it is a cool. It opens up a lot of like visual differences.
It is also not an inconsequential amount of time that it takes to get to World 3. Um, these levels take a long time, and there's
Mm-hmm.
8 levels in each world, plus the 2 hidden levels, which I don't know about you, Mark, but I didn't see a single one of
Nope.
those. Where do you have like a minimum threshold of point values as you finish a level? Like if you were to finish a level with like 48%, you keep going?
Yeah, by the end I was like, whatever. Because and only because like I genuinely like was not enjoying that part of the game.
Yeah.
And so to spend more time on it just felt silly. Like really, I kept pressing on, and like look, the game is not bad. So if you're interested in playing it, like 100% play it, because I want people to experience all like the different Shy Guys, because like the enemy types in this game I like seeing, even if I don't like encountering them. And so I would recommend it for that reason, if nothing else, because I don't know that we're ever going to see these like like warrior Shy
Yeah.
Guys or flowerhead Shy Guys like ever again.
Or that we'll even ever see Goombas and Koopas looking like this again, you know?
Yeah.
Like these are singular designs. I also think that just on the subject of the presentation and like the sort of design stuff that you just need to see, um, do not be dissuaded if you are playing this game for the first time and you are watching the opening cinematic and you're like, this looks bad and the writing is boring. Because you're right, it does look bad and the writing is boring. Why does it use it's using pre-rendered graphics in that opening sequence, and the writing is very like reductive and storybooky, and the game is not at its best when it is throwing out language. It does its best storytelling either like silently or around the language. Like when you get to the end of the game, which is it's just a great turn, right? For the end of the game, you're approaching the final castle and you're doing it as a helicopter flying as fast as you can, and Kamek is flying all around this Magic Koopa that's been tormenting you the whole time, making enemies big. Um, and so it's a cool approach. He's like dive bombing you, and you're like just making your way into the castle. Then you fight your way through, and you get to Kamek, and you've woken Baby Bowser, and he's upset that like, oh, what Bowser's baby Bowser's awake, and then baby Bowser flattens Kamek, just jumps on him. It's like it's so cute and it's so funny and is such a just like the shrinking you to go inside the frog is such a cool subversion of what every other encounter has been. And I really think that all of that is undercut by the crappy cinematic at the beginning of this game.
For whatever reason, the visuals, like those pre-rendered visuals, again, I'm kind of like thinking they were like, oh gosh, we gotta do this like Donkey Kong 3D type thing. It
Right.
reminds me more of like an unrefined version of what we would get with Yoshi's story, where it's like, okay, we're doing like this 3D polygon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it. It almost looks like claymation, like stop motion photography. I don't know what it is. It is very off-putting.
Yeah, I mean, especially when the game does so much with sprites and Mode 7 and the FX2 chip. I mean, even like the world map, the way it is rotating around these sprites on like a weird little like turntable almost, that they've built up all these pillars of the island, and they're all just single polygons with a sprite on them. But it looks so cute and so charming. Like, when the game is leaning into its appeal, it knows what it is and it does it well. Okay, Mark, I think that concludes our conversation about Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Mark, what do you think? You think these are going to be popular opinions? Did we do a popular thing now? Did we do an unpopular thing?
I don't think this is Donkey Kong Country 2 levels of sacrilege. I think we although I stand 100% by all of our Donkey Kong Country 2 opinions, I think in general we are much more positive about Yoshi's Island.
Also, we probably could have gotten by without mentioning our opinions on Donkey Kong Country 2, because we reviewed that game like 2 years ago. I'm sure we have people who have no idea how bad our opinions are on that. But I would love to hear everyone else's experiences with this game, with Yoshi's Island. So you can always send us an email at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com. And let us know, where we are in line with your opinions and where we might be getting it wrong. And, just let us know. It's always good to get more voices in the mix. And speaking of more voices in the mix, we are talking about Star Fox. So you better send us your to us by next Wednesday so we can all talk about Star Fox together. That's going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, you can rate and review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, please share it wherever you share stuff. That helps us out a whole bunch. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Nin Cart Society. And then, of course, we have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying, see you later, fat shy guy. And thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Mia.
Hey, it's Allie.
And we host the Rom-Com Review podcast, P.S. I Love Rom-Com.
Each week, we'll have incredible guests come and discuss a new rom-com, grand gestures, meet-cutes, and of course, that elusive chemistry.
Mia, what are you doing holding that giant boombox over your head?
I'm hoping to win over listeners with this grand gesture. Take us back! Find a new episode every week.
And subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Brought to you by Campfire Media. Wow, you're still holding that boombox.
Yeah, I've got great upper body strength. Thanks, CrossFit.
Yes, I love rom-coms. Campfire.